All right, let's get cooking. Welcome to the latest edition of Chin Check Sports Radio. I'm your host, JD. I want to thank you all for taking the time out to join us. And as always, we welcome any suggestions, feedback, comments, and criticisms, which improves the quality of our program, which ultimately improves your listening experience. Before we get started, we want to send all of you our tremendous thanks for your support. Again, people are slowly but surely finding out about who we are and what we do, and they enjoy and respect the passion with which we speak. As we stated before, we are simply sharing our passions with you all as we continue to build our listening army to take over the world. On this episode, we definitely wanted to opine on a recent matter that we have been keeping our eye on from a distance, and that is a situation regarding NBA superstar guard Kyrie Irving of the Brooklyn Nets and his banishment and outspokenness against the COVID-19 vaccine. It has recently been reported that due to New York's vaccine mandate, unvaccinated players could not play in any games in New York, obviously New York City or New York State. So Kyrie Irving was prohibited from playing in all of the Brooklyn Nets home games this upcoming NBA season, which starts next Tuesday. Now, if you don't know anything about the NBA, they play an 82-game regular season, which 41 games are going to be at home at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn. So being that he is prohibited from playing, he cannot play in half of the team's games. And that's not even counting traveling to other cities. That's not counting other states who might have a version of a COVID vaccine mandate, but that's conversation for another day. And being that the team has decided to, I don't want to say suspend, but to banish him from the team for the time being, as he is very outspoken about the COVID-19 vaccine. Now, this particular episode, it is not to discuss whether one should or should not receive the vaccine. That's not what this conversation about. This conversation is about athletes who make a stand for themselves, and in some cases, some of the vitriol that they receive when they're not protesting what the public at large wants them to protest. So that's kind of going to be our focus this evening. Now, as we stated, Kyrie Irving has been very adamant about not taking the COVID-19 vaccine. I simply say this, that is his right to do it. He has a choice whether he wants to do it or not. Now, as private companies, and I think American society has to realize, you have a right to have your freedom of choice. You have your rights to choose and live how you want to live. But at the same time, companies have a right to do what's best for business. And I think oftentimes people tend to forget that you have the right to exercise individuality. You have the right to be your own person. But as a business, as an entity, they have the right to do what's best for business. And the Brooklyn Nets have exercised their right to do what's best for business. The NBA has exercised their right to do what's best for business. And we get it from both sides. My issue is with the vitriol that Kyrie Irving was getting from those in the mainstream media about him being selfish, about the team comes first. If Kyrie Irving believes that the stand that he's making, he doesn't feel comfortable getting a vaccine, he doesn't feel comfortable getting, quote, the shot, then that's okay. He has a right to believe that. My thing is to now simply state that he should get the vaccine solely because it's for the greater good of the team. That's where I have a problem with, because the fact that he's very outspoken against the vaccine, and now those in the mainstream media are really voicing their opinions. Like this guy Stephen A. Smith, we know how much of an ass that he can be, and again, that man has a right to believe what he wants to believe. This is the same Kyrie Irving who believes that the world is flat. That really doesn't concern me. Hey, it is what it is. The man has a right to believe what he wants to believe. Now, I do agree being unvaccinated can possibly pose a risk to other players. I get it, and that's why the team is doing what's best for them. But what kills me is all the anger and vitriol that he has received from really the public and the mainstream media. Now, he is becoming a martyr for the anti-vaxxers. He's really become immortal as a guy who is standing on his principles and who's really standing strong for what he believes in. And I respect anybody who stands on their principles as long as it's not make an argument directly hurting anybody, because again, standing on principles, it could be political ideology, it could be religious beliefs. We all have things that we hold near and dear to our heart that we probably will fight over, and we will stand 10 toes down defending those beliefs and that ideology. In the case of Kyrie, this is his line in the sand. This is his saying, I'm not taking the vaccine. I'm not going to put my health at risk. And who are we to tell him or to excoriate him from making a choice that he feels that is best for him? So this is where we're going to lend our support for Kyrie. Again, it's not debating whether he should or should not take the vaccine. This is about supporting what he believes in, and we don't have a problem with that. Call the man names and to say these vile things that's been said in the mainstream media, I don't agree with that. It seems to be a bit of a herd belief. We'll just do it anyway. And no, that's not how this country works. Because again, we can think of other athletes who have stuck by their guns. And of course, we know the circumstances. They're different. The reasons are different. But at its core, it's still the same. People standing up and drawing a line in the sand for what they believe in. Most famously, Muhammad Ali. He stood against the Vietnam War. Now, before his death, Muhammad Ali was a worldwide icon. But people forget, during that time in the 1960s, people felt that what Ali did was tantamount to treason, speaking against the war, refusing to be inducted to the draft, exiled for 3 years, really couldn't fight really during his peak. And of course, the man later on in life, he became a global icon, and to this day, years after his death, he's still a global icon. And you can make an argument, it's probably still the biggest name in boxing in the last, 50, 60 years. So, but remember, there's always revisionist history, where Muhammad Ali was really, I don't want to use the word hated, but strongly disliked by a lot in America. But again, there was a segment of America who supported his anti-war stance, because again, going back in history, if you watch videos and documentaries and read books, there were people who were totally against the Vietnam War, and Muhammad Ali's reasons was not so much being, quote, against war per se, but he felt the type of way about going to fight a war for a country as a black man where he didn't receive the same treatment or the same fair and equal treatment back in America. He didn't see the point in going to Vietnam, as he stated, to murder a bunch of people where he's not getting equal treatment here and seeing black people murdered here in America. So again, that is something that he believed in, whether you believe in war or not. That is something that he totally believed in. That was his right to believe in. Guess what? Because of that, he suffered in the process. Again, 3 years of struggling, 3 years of his prime, and everything like that. So again, sometimes people stand 10 toes down with what they believe in. Who are we to tell people what they should and what they shouldn't believe in? That's the point of a free society, which is what America is supposed to be. Let's look at former Chris Jackson, or known as Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf. A lot of folks forget this. Before Colin Kaepernick, he protested standing for the flag. He protested against the national anthem, saying that the flag was a symbol of oppression and tyranny. He then suffered a price being effectively blackballed from the NBA. If you remember him from the Denver Nuggets, then recently folks bring up Colin Kaepernick, who was taking a knee during the national anthem, and we have done a broadcast about that very issue before. So again, people have the right to take the stand. Now, the problem is, again, when you make a stand for yourself, you should always be aware and always be cognizant and mindful of the blowback. There's always going to be some level of retaliation, whether it's going to be out in the open retaliation or behind the scenes retaliation. Obviously, in the case of Colin Kaepernick being blackballed from the NFL, anybody with two eyes would know that around the time he was playing, he clearly was at least one of the top 30 quarterbacks in the league. So that really goes without saying. But again, that's how these things in life works. Now, in the case of Kyrie Irving, where his argument is coming from as well with people who are the anti-vaxxers is that if they're gonna force this agenda upon America to take this vaccine, what's next? Because again, folks always feel that once you start going down one slippery slope, the rest of the slopes are right there to follow. So that's what part of the problem is. I think that's where Kyrie Irving and a lot of people who are the anti-vaxxers, that's kind of their belief, saying, well, if they're going to force us to do this, then what's coming next? What I don't agree with, especially folks in the mainstream sports media who are just on some matter of fact will just take it, and pretty much what they're saying is shut up, nigga, play ball. Because again, when you're an athlete, in some case a black athlete, speaking up on things that they want you to speak up on, that's okay. But if it's something that you're going against the grain or you're going against what the mainstream wants you to talk about, now is just shut up and play ball. So again, now I don't want to make this too much of a race issue, because Buffalo Bills wide receiver Cole Beasley has adopted a very strong anti-vaccine stance. When he spoke out during training camp, he didn't feel comfortable getting the vaccine, and he has a right to do it. Of course, he was facing all type of backlash, specifically from the left. He deactivated his Twitter account. Not coincidentally, his production and role in the Buffalo Bills offense has started to decline as they now are on their great season. Quarterback Cam Newton. There were folks who believed one of the reasons why he was cut from the New England Patriots is because he had a strong anti-vaccine stance. Even, of course, now the Patriots said that had nothing to do with it, but of course, behind the scenes, you have your conspiracy theorists who believe that the fact that Cam Newton, that the reason why he was cut because, again, he didn't take the vaccine. But recently, it's been reported that he has, in fact, taken the vaccine, and hopefully will find a spot in the NFL. Again, so we'll see what happens there. But this is something we definitely wanted to touch on because, again, this is a very hot button issue for a whole lot of people. We're not here to talk about whether you should or whether you shouldn't get it, but we're understanding Kyrie Irving's choice, and that's his choice. Now, as in life, there's always prices to pay for the choices that we make. And that's okay. I believe they said a man is going to lose probably about $17 million this season if he doesn't play. That's something that he has to feel comfortable making that choice. And who are we to judge him if he made that choice? That is all Kyrie's choice. So I'm not going to sit up here and say that he's the bad guy for doing what he did or making the choice that he made or taking the stand that he took. I'm not going to say that, nor am I going to blame the Brooklyn Nets for taking the stand that they did because they have to do what's best for business. My issue is with the criticizing the man. Just, he's an idiot, he's flaky, he's this, he's that. The man has a right to believe what he wants to believe in, and we have no right to judge him and criticize him for him because those are the choices that he's making, and he is right. He does have the right to his body. He does have the right to make the decisions that's best for his body. That's his right. It's not for us to say what he should and what he should do. He made his choice. The Nets made the choice. And that's how this thing called life works, especially life in America, where there shouldn't be any, which when people talk about big government or the power of the government, that's the whole point of a little thing called the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, where people have rights to make choices and they have the right free of too much government intrusion in their bodies. But again, we live in a different time now. This pandemic is something that has totally upended the way we live. So a lot of rules are being stretched, are being bent for the greater good. So again, the anti-vaxxers, their belief is if we're willing to bend and stretch the rules here, if we're willing to put people's medical information out there, if we're going to force a vaccine on people, then what's next? And I think that's where Kyrie Irving and a lot of his folks who think like he thinks, and again, we're looking at this from down the middle. That's where a lot of people with his belief, they tend to believe that. And some people just don't even feel comfortable with the vaccine because some people feel that it came too quickly at the start of the pandemic. Did it, it's recently beginning FDA approval. So again, there are people who are still hesitant to get it, and Kyrie Irving being probably the most famous person, especially from an athletic standpoint and really a celebrity standpoint, who's been really outspoken against getting the vaccine. Now, of course, he's getting the blowback. Every major, sports channel, sports talk podcast, mainstream sports media has spoken about this. We're definitely speaking about this, but we're looking at it. We're looking at this down from the middle. We understand why he made a decision. We understand why the Nets made the decision, and we should leave it at that. To call the man names and insult the man and to say these things that I've been saying, or pretty much just shut up and play ball and just go with the flow, that's a direct contrast from what they were saying last year about athletes having to speak out about quote injustice and really going against the grain in society. But now all of a sudden it's fall back in line and get with the herd. So last year it was speak out, use your voice, speak out, use your platform, you're a role model, blah, blah, blah. This year is shut up and get in line and just do what we have to do because for the sake of the team. Well, now does the sake of the team override the health and the belief health of that one individual person? So this is just a conversation for another day. Again, this is something that we have been sitting on for a little while. We definitely wanted to opine on it. This is Chin Check Radio signing out.